Kang Doha stood in the shadow of the marble pillar, watching the vampire princess laugh at something her handmaiden said. He had been her bodyguard for 2 years now, and he still found her kindness surprising in a world where humans were treated as nothing more than servants or food. The kingdom of Velrith was ruled by vampires, who lived in massive castles and ancient towers. Humans existed beneath them, working in fields and kitchens, and sometimes, if they were lucky or unlucky depending on how one viewed it, serving in the royal household. Doha had volunteered for this position when no other human would take it. Everyone thought he was crazy or suicidal or both. But he had his reasons he kept locked away in the deepest part of his heart, where no one could touch them. Princess Seraphina was different from the other vampires. She never looked at Doha like he was beneath her, never treated him like property, never made him feel like his human blood made him worthless. Instead, she talked to him about books and stars and dreams, things that vampires rarely discussed with their own kind, let alone with humans. "Doha," she called out, her silver eyes finding him in the shadows. "You do not have to hide over there. Come join us." He stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. He never forgot his place, even if she did, because forgetting could get him killed in this world. "I am comfortable here, Your Highness," he replied. "I can protect you better from a distance." Seraphina smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made him remember why he stayed in this dangerous position. She was worth protecting, worth dying for. If it came to that, tonight was the Festival of Crimson Moons, a celebration that happened once every 100 years when 3 blood-red moons aligned in the sky. Vampires from all across the kingdom had gathered at the castle, filling the halls with laughter and music and the subtle scent of danger. Doha did not trust crowds. Too many faces meant too many potential threats, and his hand never strayed far from the sword at his hip. Queen Valdris sat on her throne at the far end of the great hall, watching everything with eyes that had seen 3,000 years of history. She was ancient and powerful and absolutely terrifying, and Doha made sure to never draw her attention. The queen had 7 children, but everyone knew Seraphina was her favorite. Perhaps it was because Seraphina reminded her of someone she had lost long ago. Or perhaps it was simply because Seraphina was the only one of her children who still believed in kindness. As the night grew deeper and the celebrations grew louder, Doha noticed something strange. 3 vampires near the eastern entrance kept glancing toward the princess. Their movements, too coordinated to be coincidence. His instincts screamed at him, and he had learned long ago to trust his instincts. "Your Highness," he said quietly, moving closer to Seraphina. "We should leave." Before she could respond, the lights went out. Screams filled the darkness, and Doha grabbed the princess and pulled her behind him. "Stay close to me," he commanded, drawing his sword. The attackers came fast, faster than any vampire he had ever fought. They wore black masks and carried blades that gleamed with a sickly green coating poison. He realized, designed to kill even vampires. Doha fought with everything he had. He was human, which meant he was slower and weaker than his enemies. But he was also trained and determined and absolutely unwilling to let them touch the princess. He cut down the first attacker with a strike to the throat. The second one he caught with a kick to the knee before driving his blade through its chest. The third one slashed his arm, and fire spread through his veins as the poison entered his blood, but he kept fighting. That was what he did, what he had always done. "Doha, you are hurt." Seraphina cried out. "I am fine," he lied, cutting down another assassin. The poison was spreading fast, making his vision blur and his legs shake, but he could not stop. There were still more of them, still more threats between him and the princess's safety, and then he saw it. One assassin had slipped past him while he was fighting the others. The masked figure was racing towards Seraphina with a dagger raised high. Doha did not think. He simply moved. He threw himself between the princess and the blade. Feeling the dagger sink deep into his chest, piercing his heart with cold fire. The pain was incredible, worse than anything he had ever experienced. But he did not scream instead. He turned and drove his own sword through the assassin's skull before his legs finally gave out beneath him. He fell, and Seraphina caught him, lowering him gently to the ground. Her tears fell on his face like rain, and he thought it was strange that a vampire would cry for a human. No, she sobbed, pressing her hands against the wound that was pouring blood onto the marble floor. Doha, please. You cannot die, please. He wanted to tell her it was okay. He wanted to tell her that protecting her was the only good thing he had ever done with his life. He wanted to tell her about his mother and his sister and all the reasons he had come to this castle in the first place, but the poison had taken his voice. And all he could do was look at her and hope she understood. I am sorry. He finally managed to whisper. I was not strong enough, and then the darkness took him. And Kang Doha died in the arms of the vampire princess he had sworn to protect. Last thing he heard was Seraphina screaming his name. And the last thing he felt was her cold tears on his cooling skin. He had failed. He had not saved his sister, had not earned enough money to buy her medicine, had not been the hero he wanted to be, but at least he had saved the princess. And that would have to be enough in the shadows of the Great Hall. Queen Valdris watched her daughter weep over the body of a human servant, and something ancient stirred in her chest. She had not felt anything like it in over 1,000 years, and she did not know what to call it. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was respect. Perhaps it was something else entirely. She stepped forward, her presence silencing the chaos around her, and looked down at the dead man who had given everything to save her child. Interesting, she murmured. And for the first time in centuries, the vampire queen began to consider the impossible. Queen Valdris carried the body of the dead human herself, which caused whispers to spread through the castle like wildfire. No one had ever seen the ancient queen touch a human, let alone carry one in her arms as if he were something precious. Seraphina followed her mother with tears still streaming down her pale face. She had not stopped crying since Doha fell, and she did not care who saw her grief. Mother, where are you taking him? She asked, her voice broken and raw. To the crypt, Valdris replied, her tone giving nothing away. Where the oldest magic sleeps. The royal crypt lay beneath the castle, carved into the bedrock thousands of years ago by vampires who remembered when the world was young. It was a place of power and secrets, and only members of the royal bloodline were allowed to enter. Valdris placed Doha's body on the stone altar at the center of the chamber. The walls were covered with ancient symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness, responding to her presence. Mother, Seraphina said, suddenly understanding. You cannot mean to tell me about him, Valdris interrupted, turning to face her daughter. Tell me why you weep for a human. Seraphina wiped her tears with shaking hands. How could she explain what Doha had meant to her? How he had been the first person in her long life to treat her like a friend rather than a princess. He was kind, she began. He was brave and loyal and good. He never asked for anything, never wanted power or wealth or eternal life. He just wanted to protect me. And I never understood why until tonight. She looked at his still face, peaceful now in death, and her heart broke all over again. He told me once that he had a sister, she continued, that she was sick and dying, and that he took this job to earn money for her medicine. But the medicine was too expensive, and she died before he could save her. He blamed himself, Mother. He carried that guilt every single day. Valdris listened without expression, but her ancient eyes were fixed on the dead man's face. He stayed anyway, Seraphina said. Even after his sister died, even after there was nothing left for him in the human world. He stayed because he said protecting me gave his life meaning. And you? Valdris asked, what did he mean to you? Seraphine's tears fell freely now. She did not try to hide them or pretend to be strong. He was my friend, she whispered. "The only real friend I have ever had. Everyone else sees me as a princess or a prize or a path to power, but Doha saw me as a person. He listened when I talked, laughed at my jokes, even when they were not funny, and never once made me feel like I was strange for caring about humans." She fell to her knees beside the altar and took Doha's cold hand in hers. "He died for me, Mother. He knew the poison was killing him, but he kept fighting anyway. How do I live with that? How do I deserve a sacrifice like that?" Valdris was silent for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice was softer than Serafina had ever heard it. "You do not deserve it," the Queen said. "None of us deserve such loyalty. That is what makes it extraordinary." She moved to the altar and looked down at Kang Doha's peaceful face. In 3,000 years, she had seen countless humans die, some brave, some cowardly, most simply accepting their fate. But she had never seen one fight through poison that should have paralyzed him in seconds just to protect someone else. "The assassins used Wraithbane poison," she said. "It is designed to cause maximum suffering. A single drop should have left him screaming on the floor for hours before death finally took him. But he kept fighting," Serafina said. "He killed 4 of them after he was poisoned." 5, Valdris corrected. "I counted 5. She reached out and touched the wound over Doha's heart. The flesh was cold and still, but she could feel something lingering there, a spark of something that refused to completely fade. "Remarkable," she murmured. "Mother." "Please," Serafina begged. "Can you save him? You are the oldest and most powerful vampire in the kingdom. Surely there must be something you can do." Valdris looked at her daughter, seeing the desperation in her silver eyes. She remembered feeling that way once, long ago, when she had lost someone she loved and would have done anything to bring them back. "There is one way," she said slowly, "but it has never been done before." "What is it?" "I can turn him," Valdris said. "I can give him my blood and make him one of us." Seraphine's eyes widened. Vampires rarely turned humans, and when they did, the new vampires were always treated as lesser creatures, servants bound to their makers forever. "But there is more," Valdris continued. "I will not make him a servant. I will make him a true member of our bloodline, with all the rights and privileges that come with it. That has never been done." Serafina gasped. "The court will never accept it. The court will do as I command," Valdris said. And there was iron in her voice that reminded everyone why she had ruled for 3,000 years. She bit into her own wrist. An ancient blood that carried the power of millennia flowed from the wound. She pressed it to Doha's cold lips and let her essence pour into him. "Drink," she commanded, though he could not hear her. "Drink and return to us." The magic of the crypt responded to her will. The symbols on the walls blazed with crimson light, and the air grew thick with power. Serafina watched in awe as her mother performed a ritual that had not been attempted in over 2,000 years for 3 days and 3 nights. Valdris stayed by the altar, feeding her blood to the dead human and pouring her magic into his broken body. She did not eat or sleep or rest, and when her advisors came to protest, she sent them away with a single glare. On the 3rd night, something changed. The wound on Doha's chest began to close. His skin grew pale as marble, and his heart, which had been silent and still began to beat with a new rhythm. Serafina grabbed her mother's hand, hope blazing in her eyes. "It is working," she whispered. "He is coming back." But Valdris frowned. Something was wrong. She could feel it in the magic. A disruption where there should have been harmony. Doha's eyes opened, and they were crimson, the mark of a newborn vampire. He sat up slowly, looking around the crypt with confusion on his beautiful face. "Doha!" Serafina cried, throwing her arms around him. "You are alive. I cannot believe it. You are really alive." He did not return her embrace. His body was stiff and his expression was blank as he looked at the princess clinging to him. "Who are you?" he asked, and his voice was cold and empty. Like a winter wind blowing through a hollow tree, Serafina pulled back, shock and horror spreading across her face. "Doha, it is me," she said. "It is Serafina. You remember me, do you not?" "You have to remember me." But there was no recognition in those crimson eyes, no warmth or affection or memory. He looked at her the same way he would look at a stranger. Valdris closed her eyes. She understood now what had gone wrong. The poison had not just killed his body, it had damaged his soul, destroying the memories that made him who he was. The man who had died for love had returned, but the love itself was gone. "What is my name?" Doha asked, looking at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. Valdris placed her hand on his shoulder, and when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that surprised even her. "Your name is Kang Doha," she said, "and from this moment forward, you are under my protection. I swear it on my crown and my blood. No harm will ever come to you again." It was a vow she had never made to anyone, not even her own children. And as the words left her lips, she felt something shift inside her ancient heart. She did not know what it meant, but she knew one thing for certain: she would find a way to bring him back, no matter how long it took. 1 month had passed since Kang Doha woke as a vampire, and in that time, he had learned many things about his new existence. He learned that sunlight burned his skin, that human blood made him stronger, and that he could move faster than the wind when he wanted to. What he could not learn was who he used to be. The servants whispered about him as he walked through the castle halls. They called him the Hollow Knight, the dead man walking, the queen's pet. He heard every word with his enhanced senses, but none of it stirred any feeling inside him. He was empty. Like a cup that had been drained of everything that once filled it, Queen Valdris had assigned him to the royal guard, placing him directly under her command. Some said it was because she wanted to watch him, to make sure the experiment had not created a monster. Others said she was protecting him from the nobles, who resented a human being elevated to royal status. Doha did not know which was true, and he did not care enough to ask. Princess Serafina visited him every day, bringing books and paintings and small objects that she said belonged to his past. She told him stories about their conversations, laughed at memories he could not share, and cried tears he could not understand. "This was your favorite book," she said one afternoon, holding up a warm volume of human poetry. "You read it so many times that the pages started falling out. I had the royal bookbinder repair it for your birthday last year." Doha took the book and looked at it. The words on the pages meant nothing to him, stirred nothing inside his chest, made him feel nothing at all. "I am sorry," he said, handing it back. "I do not remember." Seraphine's smile faltered, but she did not give up. She never gave up, no matter how many times he disappointed her. "What about this?" she asked, pulling out a small wooden carving of a rabbit. "You made this yourself. You said your sister loved rabbits, and you used to carve them for her when she was sick." Sister. The word echoed in his mind like a stone dropped into a deep well, but there was no response, no memory rising from the depths. "I had a sister?" he asked. "Yes," Serafina said, her voice trembling. "Her name was Doha Tukang Minji. You loved her more than anything in the world." He should have felt something, grief or loss, or at least curiosity. But there was only emptiness, vast and cold and endless. "I am sorry," he said again, because it was the only thing he could say. That night, the Crimson Veil attacked the castle again. They came through the sewers this time, emerging in the lower halls like shadows given form. Alarms rang through the corridors, and the royal guard rushed to defend the Queen. Doha was among them, moving with a speed and precision that surprised even the veteran vampire soldiers. He had discovered that while his memories were gone, His fighting skills remained burned into his muscles and bones. Like words carved in stone, he killed without hesitation and without mercy. His blade sang through the air, cutting down assassins before they could even raise their weapons. He was efficient, cold, mechanical when the battle ended. 12 assassins lay dead at his feet, and not a single drop of blood stained his uniform. Queen Valdris found him standing among the bodies, his crimson eyes glowing in the darkness. She had watched the entire fight from the shadows, and what she saw troubled her. "You fight well," she said, stepping into the light. Doha bowed his head. He had learned that the queen expected respect, even from those she had elevated to royal status. "I do what is required," he replied. "But do you know why you fight?" she asked, moving closer to examine the bodies. "Do you feel anything when you kill?" It was a strange question, and Doha considered it carefully before answering. "No," he admitted. "I feel nothing. I see an enemy, and I eliminate the threat. There is no anger, no satisfaction, no regret. That is not how you fought before." Valdris said quietly, "My daughter told me you used to hate violence. You said every death weighed on your soul, even the deaths of those who deserve to die." Doha looked at his hands, pale and strong and stained with blood that was already drying in the cold air. "Perhaps that man is truly dead," he said. "Perhaps I am someone else now." Valdris studied him for a long moment, her ancient eyes seeing things that others could not. She saw the emptiness inside him, the hollow space where his heart used to be, and she recognized it because she had felt something similar once, long ago. "No," she said finally. "You are still him. The memories are lost, but the soul remains. I saw it during the battle." "What did you see?" "When one of the assassins broke through and headed towards Seraphine's chambers, you moved before anyone else. You did not think, did not calculate, did not consider the strategic implications. You simply ran to protect her." Doha remembered that moment. The assassin had been fast, faster than the others, and something inside Doha had screamed at him to move, to stop the threat, to save. To save whom? He could not remember her face, could not recall her name, could not explain why her safety mattered more than anything else in that instant. But his body had known, had acted without his permission, had done what needed to be done. "I do not understand," he confessed. "I do not remember caring about her. I do not remember caring about anything." "The heart remembers what the mind forgets," Valdris said. "Give it time." She turned to leave, but Doha's voice stopped her. "Your Majesty, may I ask you something?" She paused without turning around. "You may. Why did you save me?" he asked. "I was just a human servant. My life meant nothing compared to the thousands of vampires in your kingdom. Why waste your power and blood on someone like me?" It was a question she had been asking herself for a month, and she still did not have a satisfactory answer. She could say it was because her daughter begged her, or because she was curious about his strength, or because she wanted to send a message to the Crimson Veil. But none of those answers were the truth. "Because you deserve better," she said finally, surprising herself with the honesty in her voice. "You gave everything to protect my daughter, and you expected nothing in return. In 3,000 years, I have never seen any one human or vampire display such pure selflessness." She turned to look at him, and for a moment, her mask of cold authority slipped away. "You were worth saving, Kang Doha. Even if you cannot remember why, I need you to believe that." She left him standing among the bodies, and Doha remained there for a long time, thinking about her words that night. He had his first dream since awakening. It was fragmented and confusing, full of colors and sounds that made no sense. But in the center of it all was a woman's face, young and kind and somehow familiar, and she was laughing at something he had said when he woke. There were tears of blood running down his cheeks, and he did not know why. He only knew that for the first time since his rebirth, he wanted to remember. He wanted to know who that woman was and why her laughter made his dead heart ache. He found Serafina in the garden at dawn, watching the sun rise from beneath the shade of an ancient tree. She looked tired, like she had not slept in days. And there were shadows under her silver eyes. "Your Highness," he said. Approaching carefully, "I dreamed last night." She turned to him, hope flickering in her exhausted face. "What did you dream?" "A woman," he said, "young and kind." She was laughing. I think she might have been my sister." Seraphine's tears fell before she could stop them. And this time, Doha felt something stir in his chest, not a memory, but something deeper, something that made him want to reach out and comfort her. "That was Minji," she whispered. "You used to dream about her all the time. You said her laughter was the most beautiful sound in the world." Doha did not remember the dreams, did not remember his sister, did not remember anything at all. But as he watched Serafina cry, he found himself kneeling beside her and taking her hand in his. "I want to remember," he said, and for the first time, he meant it. "Will you help me?" Serafina squeezed his hand and smiled through her tears. "Always," she promised. "I will never stop trying. Not until you come back to us." And somewhere in the darkness of his hollow heart, a tiny spark of light began to grow. Queen Valdris made the announcement at the midnight council meeting, and her words sent shockwaves through the assembled nobles. "I will be leaving the castle for 1 week," she declared. "I am taking Kang Doha to his birthplace to help restore his memories." The council chamber erupted in protests. Advisors shouted over each other. Ancient lords pounded their fists on the table. And even Valdris's oldest friend, a vampire named Cassius, who had served her for 2,000 years, rose to object. "Your Majesty, this is madness," Cassius said. "You cannot leave the kingdom undefended while the Crimson Veil still threatens us. And for what a broken human who cannot even remember his own name." Valdris silenced him with a look that could have frozen fire. "He is not a broken human," she said coldly. "He's a member of my bloodline, and I will not abandon him to suffer in darkness when there is something I can do to help." "But why must you go personally?" Another advisor demanded. "Send servants to gather information. Send guards to protect him. There is no reason for the queen herself to." "Enough," Valdris commanded, and the word carried the weight of 3 millennia. "My decision is final. Serafina will rule in my absence, and you will obey her as you obey me. Is that understood?" No one dared to argue further. 3 nights later, Valdris and Doha departed the castle in a simple carriage drawn by black horses. They traveled without guards or servants, which was unheard of for royalty, but the queen insisted that a large procession would only attract unwanted attention. "Where are we going?" Doha asked as the carriage rolled through the dark countryside. "To a village called Wangjin." Valdris replied, "It is where you were born and raised. Your mother died there when you were 16, and your sister followed 5 years later." The names meant nothing to him, stirred no memories or emotions. But Doha found himself leaning forward anyway. "How do you know these things?" "I had my people investigate your past," the queen admitted. "I wanted to understand what made you willing to die for my daughter." It was a surprisingly honest answer, and Doha appreciated her directness. Too many people in the castle spoke in riddles and half-truths, but Queen Valdris seemed incapable of deception. "And what did you learn?" he asked. "That you were a good man," she said simply. "Perhaps the best man I have encountered in all my long years." They traveled for 3 nights, resting during the day in abandoned buildings or caves that Valdris chose with the precision of someone who had wandered these lands for centuries. She knew every safe place, every hidden path, every danger that lurked in the shadows on the 4th night. They arrived at Wangjinthi village was small and poor. A collection of wooden houses clustered around a central well. Humans walked the muddy streets with tired faces and bent backs. going about their simple lives without knowing that their queen was watching from the darkness. Doha stepped out of the carriage and looked around. The smell of the place hit him, first wood smoke and rain, and something else. Something that made his chest tighten with an emotion he could not name. "Does anything look familiar?" Valdris asked, coming to stand beside him. "No," he admitted. "But it feels, I do not know how to describe it." "Take your time," she said. "We are in no hurry." They walked through the village together. An ancient vampire queen and her newly turned knight. And the humans they passed either bowed in fear or ran away entirely. Doha noticed that Valdris seemed bothered by their reactions, though she tried to hide it. "They are afraid of you," he observed. "They should be," she replied. But her voice lacked conviction. They found his childhood home near the edge of the village, a small cottage with a collapsed roof and walls covered in moss. It had been abandoned for years, probably since his sister died, and nature had begun reclaiming it. Doha pushed open the broken door and stepped inside. Moonlight streamed through the holes in the roof, illuminating a space that was both foreign and hauntingly familiar. "This was your room," Valdris said, pointing to a corner where a rotted bed frame still stood. "And that was your sister's." He walked to his sister's corner and knelt on the dirt floor. Something glinted in the debris, and he reached down to pick it up, a small wooden rabbit, identical to the one Serafina had shown him, and suddenly, without warning, memory crashed into him like a wave. He was sitting in this very spot, carving the rabbit by candlelight while his sister coughed in her bed. She was so thin, so pale, so close to death that he could barely look at her without crying. "Appa," she whispered, using the Korean word for older brother. "You do not have to stay up all night making those for me." "I want to," he replied, carefully smoothing the rabbit's ears. "You said they make you happy, and right now, making you happy is the only thing I care about." She smiled, that beautiful, heartbreaking smile that lit up her entire face, despite the illness consuming her body. "Promise me something," she said. "Anything. Promise me you will find happiness after I am gone. Promise me you will not spend the rest of your life mourning me. Promise me you will find someone worth protecting and give them all the love you have been giving me." He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was going to get better, wanted to pretend that everything would be fine. But she deserved the truth, and the truth was that they both knew she was dying. "I promise," he whispered. And the tears fell freely down his cheeks. The memory faded, but the pain remained sharp and real and overwhelming. Doha clutched the wooden rabbit to his chest and sobbed, crying for the first time since his transformation, crying for the sister he had loved and lost. And Fergaten Valdris watched him from the doorway, and something inside her ancient heart cracked open. She had not felt genuine compassion in over 1,000 years. But watching this man break down over a memory of love made her remember what it was like to care about someone other than herself. "Kang Doha," she said softly. He looked up at her with blood-red tears streaming down his face. "I failed her," he choked out. "I promised I would save her, and I failed. I took the job at the castle to earn money for her medicine, but it was never enough. She died thinking I had abandoned her." "No," Valdris said firmly, kneeling beside him in the dirt. "She died knowing you loved her. That is what matters. How can you say that?" He demanded. "You did not know her. You did not see how much pain she was in. You did not hear her calling my name when she—" He stopped, overwhelmed by memories that were flooding back faster than he could process them. His mother's death, his sister's illness, the desperate choice to leave home and work for vampires, the guilt that aided him every single day. "You are right," Valdris admitted. "I did not know her. But I know you, and I know that everything you did was out of love. Your sister would not want you to carry this guilt. She would want you to remember her smile, not her suffering." Doha looked at the queen, really looked at her, and for the first time, He saw past the crown and the power and the 3,000 years of history. He saw a woman who was just as lonely as he was, just as haunted by her own past, just as desperate for connection. "How long have you been alone?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that, not in all her centuries of existence. She was the queen, the ruler. The untouchable sovereign people bowed to her and feared her and obeyed her. But no one ever wondered if she was lonely. A very long time. She finally answered. And there was truth in her voice that surprised them both. They sat together in the ruins of his childhood home. Two broken souls from completely different worlds. And for the first time since his rebirth, Doha felt something other than emptiness. He felt understanding. He felt connection. He felt the beginning of something that might, in time, become family. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for bringing me here. For helping me remember." Valdris placed her hand on his shoulder. A gesture she had not offered anyone in over a millennium. "You died protecting what you loved," she said. "That is not weakness. That is the rarest kind of strength. I want you to remember that, no matter what else you may forget." And in the darkness of his shattered home, surrounded by ghosts and grief and the weight of all he had lost, Kang Doha finally began to heal. The memories returned slowly over the following weeks, like pieces of a shattered mirror coming back together one fragment at a time. Doha remembered his childhood games and his mother's cooking and the sound of rain on their cottage roof. He remembered his first fight and his first friend, and the day he decided to become a soldier. Most importantly, he remembered why he had loved Princess Serafina, not as a man loves a woman, but as a brother loves a sister. She had reminded him of Minji, and protecting her had given him a reason to keep living after everything else was gone. "I remember now," he told her one evening in the garden. "I remember all of it." Serafina threw her arms around him and held on tight. And this time, he hugged her back. "Welcome home," she whispered. And for the first time since his rebirth, the word home actually meant something. But peace was not meant to last in the kingdom of Velrath. Crimson Veil had been gathering strength during the Queen's absence, and their final assault came on the night of the winter solstice. They attacked from all directions at once, hundreds of rebel vampires pouring through the castle gates with weapons drawn and murder in there. Doha stood beside Queen Valdris on the castle walls, watching the enemy approach like a black tide. "There are too many of them," Serafina said, fear evident in her voice, "even with the royal guard. We cannot fight them all." "We do not have to fight them all," Valdris replied calmly. "We only have to kill their leader. Without him, the Crimson Veil will scatter like leaves in the wind." The rebel leader was a vampire named Corvain, an ancient lord who had once served the queen's own father. He had grown bitter over the centuries, convinced that vampires had become weak by showing mercy to humans. He wanted to return to the old ways, when humans were nothing more than prey. "I have waited a long time for this," Corvain shouted from the courtyard below. 3,000 years you have sat on that throne." Valdris, pretending to be something more than a predator. "Tonight, I will remind you what we truly are." Valdris descended from the walls to face him, and Doha followed without hesitation. Serafina tried to stop him, but he gently removed her hand from his arm. "I made a promise once," he said, looking into her silver eyes, "to my sister on the night she died. I promised I would find someone worth protecting and give them all the love I had. You and your mother are that someone, and I will not let you face this alone." Serafina wanted to argue, wanted to beg him to stay safe. But she saw the determination in his crimson eyes and knew that nothing she said would change his mind. "Do not die again," she pleaded. "I cannot lose you twice." "I have no intention of dying," he replied with a small smile. "I have too much to live for now." The battle in the courtyard was chaos. Rebel vampires clashed with royal guards, filling the air with the sounds of steel and screaming. Doha carved a path through the enemy with the skill he had honed over a lifetime of fighting, moving toward the center where Valdris and Corvain circled each other like predators. "You waste your strength on that human-turned insect," Corvain sneered, gesturing at Doha. "He is nothing, a broken tool that should have been discarded. He is worth more than you could ever understand," Valdris replied. Her voice cold as winter frost. They clashed, ancient powers colliding in a storm of supernatural speed and strength. Corvain was old and experienced, but Valdris was older and had not survived 3 millennia by being weak. They traded blows that would have killed lesser vampires, each strike sending shockwaves through the courtyard. Doha fought his way to their side, cutting down any rebel who tried to interfere. He was no match for either of the ancient vampires in raw power, but he could protect the queen's back and prevent any cowardly attacks. "You are a fool." Corvain spat at him between strikes. "You died for a vampire princess, and now you fight for a vampire queen. Do you not see how pathetic you are? They will never truly accept you as one of them." "You are wrong," Doha replied, blocking a strike from a rebel who had tried to flank the queen. "They already have." Corvain's anger got the better of him. He overextended on a powerful strike, leaving himself open for just a fraction of a second. Valdris moved to take advantage, but another rebel vampire threw himself in the way. Sacrificing his life to save his leader, the distraction was enough. Corvain's blade found an opening, slashing across Valdris's chest and sending her stumbling backward. It was not a fatal wound, but it was enough to throw her off balance. "Now you die," Corvain hissed, raising his blade for the killing blow. But Doha was faster. He threw himself between them, just as he had done for Seraphea all those months ago. Corvain's blade caught him in the shoulder, and the pain was incredible. But Doha did not stop. He grabbed the ancient vampire's wrist with one hand and drove his own sword through Corvain's chest with the other. "Your sentiment made you weak," Corvain gasped, echoing his own words from earlier. "No," Doha replied, twisting the blade. Her sentiment gave her something worth fighting for. Corvain's eyes widened in disbelief as his ancient body began to crumble. He had lived for over 4,000 years, had survived wars and famines and the rise and fall of empires. And now he was dying at the hands of a vampire who had been human just months ago. "Impossible," he whispered. "Not impossible," Valdris said, rising to stand beside Doha. "Inevitable. You never understood that love is not weakness. It is the greatest strength there is." Together, they watched Corvain turn to ash and scatter in the winter wind with their leader dead. The remaining rebels lost their will to fight. Some surrendered immediately, throwing down their weapons and begging for mercy. Others tried to flee, only to be cut down by the royal guard. Within an hour, the Crimson Veil had been completely destroyed. The celebration that followed lasted for 3 days. Vampires from across the kingdom came to pay their respects to the queen who had saved them from civil war. But Valdris spent most of the celebration sitting quietly with Doha and Seraphina in the royal gardens. "Far from the noise and ceremony, I want to make it official," the queen announced on the third night. "Kang Doha, I am adopting you into my bloodline, not as a servant or a guard, but as a member of my family. You will have all the rights and privileges of a royal prince, answerable only to me." Doha was speechless. He had expected gratitude, perhaps a promotion or a reward. But this was beyond anything he could have imagined. "Your Majesty." "I do not argue," Seraphina interrupted with a grin. "When Mother makes up her mind, there is no changing it. Trust me, I have tried." Valdris allowed herself a small smile, which was practically joyous by her standards. "You died protecting my daughter," she said, "and tonight you nearly died protecting me. You have proven your loyalty and your love 100 times over. It is only right that I recognize what you truly are. And what am I?" Doha asked. "Family." Valdris said simply. And the word carried more weight than any crown or title ever could. Doha knelt before the queen. Not because protocol demanded it, but because he wanted to show his respect. I swear on my blood and my honor, he said. I will spend eternity protecting this family. I will never forget the second chance you gave me. And I will make sure you never regret your decision. Valdris placed her hand on his head in blessing. And I swear on my crown and my blood, she replied, no harm will ever come to you again. You are mine now, Kang Dohan, not as a possession, but as a son. Serafina hugged them both, tears of joy streaming down her face, and for a moment, the three of them were simply a family broken and scarred and imperfect, but whole in the ways that mattered most decades later. Doha stood at the Queen's side during a historic peace summit between vampires and humans. It was the first of its kind, a meeting that many had thought impossible. And it was happening because Valdris had begun to see humans differently after watching one of them sacrifice everything for love. Young human servant approached Doha during a break in the negotiations. She looked nervous, like she expected to be punished for speaking to someone so important. Excuse me, my lord, she said quietly. May I ask you a question? Doha smiled at her with the kindness he had always carried, even when he could not remember it. Of course. Do you miss being human? She asked. Do you regret what happened to you? It was a question he had asked himself many times, especially in the early days when his memories were gone and his heart felt hollow. But now, looking across the room at Seraphine's laughter and Valdris's quiet pride, he knew the answer with absolute certainty. I found my family, he said. And that is all I ever wanted. The servant bowed and returned to her duties, and Doha turned back to watch the negotiations continue. Vampires and humans sat at the same table, talking instead of fighting, building bridges instead of walls. It would take time, perhaps centuries, for true peace to be achieved. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the kingdom of Velrath had a queen who believed it was possible, a princess who had proven that kindness was not weakness, and a knight who had shown the world that love could transcend even death. And in the end, that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.